Hey, that's a good sign. It says we are live. Before we get too much into anything, please let us know if there's anything wrong with the audio. We were messing with it for a bit before, trying to make sure it's like dialed in and everything like that. But if it sounded good, we're going to go ahead and keep going. And I'm talking really slowly about this because I want to wait to see if anyone says that anything's wrong. But it sounds like things are going to be good. I'm hoping things are going to be good.
It was a good ramble. Enough time to allow some people to comment if it was going on. But
right?
Nobody is, so I think we're all right.
So far, so good, I think. I hope. So today we're going to go into kind of a different stream in our different segment of our live stream where we're kind of talking more about what's going on with us, what's going on with the industry locally, what's going on with... I don't know, anything in the craft beer world is kind of the idea. And it's going to be more of a discussion style live stream where people that are tuning in can actually talk back and forth with us and we can answer questions that we see pop up on the right hand side. So hopefully it is going to be something that's enjoyable for you, and hopefully you get some engagement out of it and find out some new things and talk about what's going on in your area of the woods, and hopefully it's fun for everybody involved. Hey, everyone's saying it sounds good. Nice. We're off to a good start.
Great start.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So the theme of today is the liquor industry is essential, and that comes from a little bit of news that happens with Genus Brewing, which is we are declared essential.
Absolutely. In this time of quarantine, some things make sense, some things don't, but we're talking about why we make sense to be essential and be open and providing at this time.
So a couple things that we personally fit into. One is the fact that food manufacturers are essential, and at least in the state of Washington, breweries and wineries are actually listed under, yes, this is live now, Joe Schmidt. Breweries and wineries are listed under the essential businesses categories because we're manufacturing something. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, it does. We're manufacturing something to supply the restaurant industry, which is essential as well. And through our industries, we actually do provide other goods and services that are actually essential at this time, like some professional grade sanitizers.
Yeah.
As well as... I mean, maybe not literally essential, but I think it's essential. Some relief and tastiness in a time of uncertainty.
That's right. And so in the beer and wine world, everybody that's already involved with the beer and wine world, including restaurants, have some sort of a to-go option, basically, an option that minimizes contact time with people so that, we're minimizing the spread of viruses. Obviously, that's with the caveat that people that are in the beer, wine, restaurant world are doing their best to mitigate anything that they could do to spread the disease. We're washing our hands a ton. We're wearing gloves when appropriate. We're sanitizing things that need to be sanitized. We're not letting other people touch a lot of our stuff right now.
Yes, keep your hands off. If you touch it, we are going to hit it with a sanitizer pretty darn quick.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
We've got a little station set up right next to our checkout right now that's got Clorox disinfectant wipes. So if you touch our checkout station, it's getting sanitized right afterwards.
Yeah, and to go along with that, while people are thinking about sanitizers, so that's something in the brewing industry or in the liquor industry, brewing industry, wine industry, cider, let's throw that in there, sake. It's something we're concerned about anyway. We want to be sanitary. We want to have sanitary conditions and kill a lot of these things just for the health of our own product, as well as the health of our customers.
You could say we're kind of experts at being sanitary. We've kind of got to be for other reasons. But the biggest news with all this is that not only are the beer, wine, liquor industry listed as essential, and we'll get into some creative things that people in the beer, wine industry are doing to help maintain their business during this whole crisis and shutdown thing that's happening, but also that we're doing a lot to help help stop the spread of COVID-19. We're doing a lot to try to see where we fit into the whole bigger picture of helping give people goods that they need, such as actual hand sanitizer.
Yes, that's something that's been actually remarkable. The response of that, we expect, being in the craft industry, we expect our other craft sisters and brothers to be doing this. But to see the government response around the world of the quickness they're allowing, especially distilleries, to pump out what is essentially their waste product as hand sanitizer, as sanitizers for everything. It's amazing to see. Of course, like I said, being in the industry, we expect to see things like this. Us in the craft alcohol industry, we're very community oriented.
Yep.
We love to give back. We love to see these things going on. So it's not unexpected for that to happen, but for the government to turn around within days to allow people to make their own hand sanitizer through the distilling industry, especially, and give it to everyone is incredible, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and we've seen this happen around the world. I know that in the beer industry, something that's a lot of people have been looking at is Brew Dogs. Brew Dogs made their own punk hand sanitizer.
Yes,
locally here in Spokane, we actually have a local distillery, Dry Fly, that's making Spokaneitizer.
Spokane, I like it. That's a great name. That is a great name.
Right?
I just saw the Oregon Distillers is making hand sanitizer and distributing it out to anybody. But, it's absolutely fantastic.
It should be illegal for any brewery not to have a still, right? I completely agree. I would love to be able to
Definitely.
do distilling on site. I don't have a still at home that I use and practice a little bit of, creating of essential oils and water distillation and stuff like that. But it would be awesome for breweries to be able to do distillation. But I think that actually might end up being a statewide thing more than anything.
There are a few breweries out there that do it. Rogue comes to mind immediately, being on the West Coast, Pacific Northwest. That's one of them that you see all the time. I do know that Dogfish Head is doing it, and they're supplying hand sanitizer. Go, Sam, you're awesome.
Yeah, heck yeah.
It's fantastic. We definitely should be allowed to do that.
If the barriers were a little bit more open, I think we definitely would jump onto that as soon as possible. Ballast Point, by the way, another one that does a lot of big stuff in the distilling world. But yeah, let's go into some things that besides the whole hand sanitizer thing, let's go into some things that we've seen other breweries market themselves as, and let's focus on some local stuff first, because I've seen a lot of people do some hard shifts in the local, not only beer industry, but also in the local food service industry. I've seen, for example, the people right next door. We're right next door to a pizza place. For those of you who are not local, you normally do takeout and to go, but they are about to start to do take and bake.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
She came in this morning and told me about that. I was like, that's a really cool idea.
Absolutely fantastic, especially in a time like this. If you're worried about the virus on anything, take and bake is beautiful. You throw it in your oven, you hit that sucker at 300, probably more like 425.
Yeah.
And everything is sanitized.
We've all seen the Papa
great.
John's commercial or Papa Murphy's commercials.
Yeah.
Love it. 425 degrees.
That's right. Give a shout out to Adam Campbell. He's saying hello from New Zealand.
Yeah.
That's pretty darn awesome.
There was a New Zealand or Australian YouTube channel that is still it. I don't know if they're New Zealand or Australian, one of the two. But he also did a YouTube video on how to make hand sanitizer, and he does all sorts of still stuff. So if you want to make hand sanitizer at home and you've got access to a still, and if you don't, you can always probably look up something like the Still Spirits Turbo 500, which is what we carry in here. But yeah, you can make your own hand sanitizer, and he's got a whole video on how to do it.
And I'm going to throw that out. He kind of glossed over a little bit. If you have a local homebrew shop that carries some of your essential oils equipment, then go get it and make your own essential oil hand sanitizer, even though it's not essential oil. Make your own hand sanitizer.
It's out of alcohol. And thank you very much, Joe Schmidt, by the way, for the super chat. We appreciate that.
Video high five. You got that.
Yeah. Other people that we've seen in the area that have, because there's a lot of people that, let's talk about how the government is responding in Washington, because I think that the government, barring a couple of small things, the government's done a really good job of adapting. And one of the things that our local government in Washington has done is licenses that don't have the ability to do to-go normally or any sort of takeout and delivery. The government in Washington, the Liquor Control Board, has made a really quick shift to say, if you just check in with us and do a quick application to do any sort of to-go or delivery, it's an automatic qualification. It happens on the spot. And so a lot of local restaurants are quickly shifting into being able to do delivery, if they do delivery on food anyways, to do delivery on alcohol too.
Yeah, it's been an amazing thing. And to see the shift in some of those restaurants actually, and I don't want to say taking beer more seriously, but shifting that focus into the beer and the cider, because they're able to do it to go, unlike liquor. but we see them coming into our shop and having a more appreciative response to the craft that we're giving, as well as seeing the shift in the government being allowed to do that, where most restaurants were not able to as well.
Yeah, we've seen probably a handful of restaurants that are normally, and these are also restaurants that are associated with like, big chain kind of restaurants too. They're not just like, your average small business like we are, but we've seen like chain restaurants that are, they're owned by local owners, but they're, your Applebee's,
I'm going to take a second and throw some sympathy out here. Texas doesn't change laws for 2 years. That is unfortunate. I do feel bad for you.
That is, yeah.
I mean, there's hope in there, because I hope
this will not last 2 years. This will not last.
No, this definitely will not. But there's hope that it'll shift quicker for you.
Yeah.
Stay strong. Yeah. Drink craft beer.
That's right. Luckily, you're further inland, though, so like hopefully it doesn't have the same immediate impact. Like Washington is one of the 3 biggest hit states, honestly, in the country. So,
yeah.
Our liquor control board is very fast acting, and we've seen a lot of people that come in from like big chain restaurants. Somebody that owns a Boston's came in today, and I was pretty surprised by that. But we're getting a lot of reach out from local businesses that are, saying, hey, we're definitely losing a lot of money, but want to keep something going. So let's figure out what we can do to get this to-go thing rolling. And a lot of them are working with companies like DoorDash that are already delivering and saying, hey, if you can also be licensed to deliver alcohol, that'd be cool. We'll work on the same page there. It's really fun to see the changes that are happening, even though it's kind of sad for everybody.
Yeah, yes, it is. Callum, the beer shelves on the U.S. markets, at least around in this area, are still full. Spokane, though, is extremely good about supporting local places and shopping local. So I think we've had a bigger rush to our craft breweries than we have to the supermarket shelves.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen a lot of people that are, at least in here, coming in, being like, hey, I don't know if you guys are going to be open for another week or another month or whatever's going to happen, but we want to support you while we can. And it's, people that they know it's unfortunate that we can't sell them beers and pints, but they still want to come in and buy growlers from us, it's been really awesome.
Yeah, definitely it has. Joe Schmidt, yes, we do sometimes. We have a smaller production, so we don't distribute as much. Right now, barring... Well, I shouldn't say barring. Haven't been there to know recently. In the Spokane area, Backyard Public House has one of our beers on tap. Steady Flow has some of our beers on tap, and they do deliver. Get after them. As well as Boomers down the road from us has one of our beers on tap.
Yeah, so we do some small scale distribution depending on our production, what we have going on. Another fun thing that's been like with people coming to us because they want to be able to retrofit their system to be able to be really good at like growler filling and stuff like that. We've made a couple business connections through this whole ordeal, and every time someone comes in and says like, hey, we got to do some growler fills / to go, can I get some equipment to do better growler fills? I hand them samples and I say, hey, if you want to buy some beer from us down the road, that'd be super cool. So hopefully we'll make some good business connections in the future with this whole ordeal as well.
Yeah. Plus, it's a random act of beer, and
everyone likes beer, right?
Exactly. It just helps make you a little bit happier.
The bottom line is we like sharing. So even if they never end up buying a keg or anything like that from us, the fact that we got to share some awesome beer, because we're really proud of the beer that we make here. The fact that we got to share some beer is always enough for us.
It makes us feel good for people to enjoy our beer.
Yeah.
Going into other businesses doing other things, as I'm holding a beer from Bardic Brewing right now.
Yeah.
This is something that they do well. A lot of brew pubs do have food. They're jumping on the delivery train, which locally here in Spokane, shout out to Treehouse. You are doing awesome. Keep it up. As well as the other food delivery services, but local first. So Bardic is doing just to make people happier. They're doing relief chocolate boxes, and they have a box of 7 different types of chocolates made locally here in Washington by Theo Chocolatier.
Yeah.
They're over in Seattle. It's pretty darn awesome. But figuring out another way to connect with people, provide a service, and help keep spirits up.
Do something that makes people happy. Like that's a cool twist, because honestly, their production is not going to be the same as something like an Applebee's or someone who has to just take their regular food menu and do to go. Oh, thank you so much, Adam Campbell. I appreciate the super chat. They're trying to kind of twist the game and create a new product that, first of all, invites people to to still shop with them because they have a product that's different than every other restaurant that's out there. But also create something that's fun and engaging and helps people celebrate what they can while they can.
Exactly. I'm going to take a second here, get a couple of these comments in there. Andy, what equipment they're getting for that? Not new faucets. There's growler fill attachments for faucets that make it extremely easy. Most people are getting those growler fill attachments, growlers even, because they haven't been a growler place before, and the growlers have been a big one, actually.
Yeah, for sure. We've had to order like extra cases of those.
Yeah, definitely. So if there's anybody in the Spokane area who needs some growlers and some growler fill attachments, we'll get you hooked up with that. But that's what a lot of people are doing. And again, you're saying Boston's came in. We had the melting pot come in too. And these places are not used to doing growler fills. So they don't have the equipment set up for it. And it's small pieces, but it's something that we can do to help them. They help us, and we help people get delicious beer.
And it's a really fun connection because as a small business here, both in the supply side of things and in the brewery side of things, we don't necessarily always make connections with bigger companies like people that own melting pots and people that own like things like Boston's. But Boston's came in, and I was able to say, hey, you might also consider down the road upgrading to like forward sealing or stainless forward sealing faucets, and was able to create a conversation about how they might be able to serve beer better in the future. A lot of these companies aren't necessarily beer focused first, but since we do deal a lot with beer, that's a conversation we can have that we wouldn't be able to have if we weren't able to make this random act of because of this pandemic kind of connection.
Yeah, exactly. Going down the line here, Big Ed, we have grains in stock.
Yes.
We are still able, thankfully, to get our grain orders in, so we do have pretty much everything that you need, and if not, we will find you a suitable equivalent for it.
Also, well, he says that Treehouse and Trillium are in his neck of the woods. Send us some right now.
Yes.
Please.
Please. Definitely. Both? Both.
Yes.
All right. Matt, how we doing? Just saw you on there. Picked up some beer from the love of God. Some pretty great guys doing some to-go beer over in the Audubon area.
Yeah.
Definitely look at them if you're looking for some beer, good local beer in that area.
Yeah. But as far as the inventory or shortage from supply chains, we haven't experienced a ton of shortage in supply chains. There has been a little bit of a disconnect when it comes to communicating with people that are supplying. Just because a lot of them are working from home now instead of from their offices, and so they're kind of dealing with new systems. But so far, everything we've ordered has come in. We have, this is kind of an aside, but we have a couple of people that are regular customers here that are dentists that have obviously been shut down by the government shutdown. But they, part of the reason that they are shut down is because not only are they interacting with people, but they also kind of they take up some of the supplies that hospitals need right now. And so when it comes time to reopening, dentists are actually slated later than everybody else in terms of reopening because they just kind of assume that hospitals are going to need all the supplies before dentists. And so I have some dentists that come in that are like really output by this whole situation.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we're talking about this, that is kind of an unintended consequence of what's happening right now. There was a lot of panic buying to start out with. People bought tons of masks and gloves and things like that medical offices needed. And so dentists were one of those that were hit because the dentists do have to wear masks and gloves and sanitizers and things like that. And so they're closing down to allow all of those supplies to go over to the hospitals and things like that.
Yeah.
Which is, it's one of those things that you don't think about in this.
I wouldn't know about it if we didn't have so many people that come and network with this, I wouldn't know about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting to see the different sides of where this is all playing out and who's being hit, differently around here.
Yeah, exactly. Adam Price, thanks so much for the super chat. We really appreciate people that are helping support us. It's one of the reasons why we like doing these live streams is also we get to connect with all you guys too. So, Jay, just so technical content, always awesome. Cool. Let's go into some more things that we've seen creatively with people that are, doing, making these local shifts. A big thing we've already kind of touched on a little bit Dentists are super risky all about spray for sure.
Definitely.
Something we've sort of touched on already is people shifting their business models altogether when it comes to, they were very much restaurants, like, for example, Boston's a Melting Pot. Melting Pot never would have thought about being a growler fill kind of place, but they have a big outreach because when the Melting Pot owner was coming in, he was talking about how they have a big mailing list, and so they're hoping that mailing list will reach out to a lot of people, but this is still a very a foreign territory for them, so they're making shifts. In the state of Washington, what's happening is that people that are able to make this shift into doing to-goes and doing like the growler fills, delivery system, which I'm not still 100% sure on where that fits in the legal system world.
I think there's a lot of looking the other way that's happening right now.
It kind of seems like that's the case,
yeah. Where it's not exactly legal that some of the people are doing this, but not everybody is paying attention to it.
I mean, they're following the guidelines that are given to them, so it's not like, a month ago, a lot of this wouldn't have been legal for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of this is, kind of tacking on beer delivery to go delivery that they already have. So they have, if they're already doing to go through like DoorDash and stuff like that, or if they have their own to go delivery system and they also happen to be a beer, wine, spirits restaurant, they can actually send some beer out.
Yes. Which is, it's honestly a really awesome thing to see. It's one of the things in Washington. I'm going to take a second here. Joe Schmidt, yes, the Melting Pot is the fondue place.
It's super good too.
You do it.
Love me some fondue.
Melted cheese, yeah, in my face hole. Anyway, that's one of the things in Washington that we've actually seen other states been able to do is some sort of delivery system that we haven't been able to do. And I will say that in Washington, we are very heavily regulated in the alcohol industry. That creates some very good things, but it also creates some problems in creating these channels. Yep. But to see our state respond so fast
to support businesses like us,
yes, it is fantastic. Because it's one of those things that where they look at it and it's no longer like, we'll get to this. It's like, no, people need to be able to be paid, even to buy groceries. People need this to be able to happen. And so it's fantastic to see the response in a positive favor for everybody. And it's fantastic to see us in the industry not taking advantage of it and doing what we should be doing anyway.
Yeah, still being responsible as much as possible, and not just being like, "Hey, we can be open because they said we can be open, so let's have a giant party here." No, everyone that's involved, at least that we've seen so far, has been just trying to make creative ways to reach out to their already stable clientele or people that are already interested in what they do, and turning that into a way to get their product out to people who want their product, and also create a revenue stream for them that supplements. It obviously doesn't fully make up for the fact that there's a full close down. There's a lot of businesses that are suffering. Luckily, there's a lot of aid that's going to come out there, and if you guys are interested in learning more about the aid side of things and the tax side of things that's going on, I'm working on potentially, we'll see if it happens, but potentially another live stream / video that might involve talking a little bit more about the technical side of how to apply for aid and all that. But to see the response that's come from our industry and people trying to just kind of get their product out there, but also, be safe and maintain that do what's right for the country has been really incredible.
Yes, exactly. Where is it? Callum. We use refractometer, hydrometer, going along with Gerhaji. I'm not going to say that. Oh, no, wait, one more down. Anyway, going on with the other comment, the refractometer is for the boil side. We don't recommend it after alcohol has been produced. It will throw off your scale on the refractometer, but it's beautiful on the boil side to check your efficiency. And then we'll use hydrometer to check FG and OGs on that.
Yeah, refractometers honestly are the best tool you can use for like during the sparge and during during the brew day to kind of see what's happening on the fly. Even at the end of brew day, we almost always use a hydrometer just because it's the most consistent, and it's also going to be the one that's lined up with our final gravity. So we know our hydrometer is going to get original gravity. We know it's going to get our final gravity. We can't use our refractometer for final gravity, so we use hydrometer for like at the end of brew day, that gravity reading. What refractometers are really good for and why we use them is like if we're taking a running off of our mash to see how much sugars are left in our mash, or like pre-boil. We use a post-boil, but we hardly ever use it for our actual like exact, original gravity.
Yeah, I can say that hydrometer is where most of that comes from. The refractometer is really used to check efficiencies and check actually final runnings. There's some beers, like just yesterday we brewed a Belgian strong ale, and it was one of those that instead of running to a certain liquid amount, I was running it to final sugar content in there. So every once in a while towards the end of it, I'd check the sugar content, see what the refractometer told me, so I could reduce that down, create a little bit more Maillard, a little bit more sugars going on inside the final beer, and extracting everything out of our mash.
Yeah, exactly. So it's refractometer is a super, super cool tool. And yes, you can use refractometer for your final gravity as well, but there's a conversion that goes on with it. And we like to use one tool for one purpose. So if it's for testing, alcohol and pre-sugars, then we use a hydrometer for both of those.
Yeah. And there's always a couple other things you got to take into account as well. I'm seeing somebody's using for long age sour beers. And of course, you got to take into account some of the viscosity of the acid that's been made in there, as well as in long agers. And that's something that people don't think about, is some of those yeast and bacteria will actually convert alcohols into acids.
Yeah.
And then if you leave them long enough, they'll convert the acids back into alcohols.
Yeah. At some point, you actually have to use a bulliometer, I think is what it's called. But it's an actual measuring device for testing the exact alcohol. Because when you have all those different bacteria playing, some of which do eat alcohol and convert them back into acids, then a bulliometer is pretty much the only way to know exactly what your alcohol is. Final gravity versus original gravity versus final gravity is an estimation that's really, really close for quick turnaround beers, but for those long age beers, there's a lot of other stuff that goes on that you can't be exact about. Kind of like IBUs. Sometimes you just need a lab.
Yeah, you need a lab to do it, or you need a big old binder full of paper to do some work.
Yeah.
I want to go back up in there. Jason Palmer, hi from Canada. Hello, back from the U.S. Send us some Kraft peanut butter and all dressed chips, please.
Yes, please.
All right, we are going into, it looks like everybody kind of digressed onto the hydrometer refractometer issue here. And the deal is, I always tell this to everybody who comes in, if it works for you, do it.
Right.
Don't do try something different if somebody else is saying that it works.
Always try.
But if something works for you, do that. We all do something a little bit different that works for us in a way that makes sense in our brains,
And if you do it enough times, you can be the best person at doing that thing, that's a really great thing. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, liquor industry doing different things. We were on the melting pot, and then we got fully distracted. Deliveries.
Deliveries, yeah.
Deliveries, yeah. We were talking about that. Washington State, they've been against it for a long time, except for actually kind of the wine industry that got away with it for a while. I shouldn't say got away. They had a system set up to do that for a long time.
The wine industry has the most expensive lobbyists.
Oh, yeah. They can afford them. And I'm not going to say that in a detrimental way at all, because they do great things for us as a whole alcohol industry. It's phenomenal.
It trickles down in almost every category except for being able to make hard cider. God damn it.
Yes. That one, no. Take that out of your legislation there.
But everything else, So one of the fun things that's happened with the LCB being able to make that transition is with the newest thing that happened. And this is Washington specific, but beer, wine, spirits restaurants can now deliver, and they're actually allowing for deliveries of bottles. So you can deliver bottles of alcohol right now as a beer, wine, spirits restaurant, which that in my mind, knowing the Washington Liquor Control Board, that blows my mind that is currently legal.
Yes, it really does. For people outside of the industry, you don't quite experience it quite as much because we're dealing with the Liquor Control Board agents, and it's complicated. Let's just say it's very complicated.
Yeah.
There are people who are working through these issues, and they have been working through them. Delivery was probably actually something that we would see in Washington in the next few years.
Right.
But this is one of those things where like, okay, let's stop putting this on the back burner and like make this a real thing. You know, it's awesome. Of course. Okay.
Adam Campbell, what are the requirements for ABV accuracy for beer labeling? Do you need to use a lab to get that level of precision? Surprisingly, no. You can 100% lie about what beer you're putting into labels as long as you submit and get label approval. Most people don't do that I know of. We definitely would not do that. We don't have any label approval for anything. But federal label approval, they do not require a lab test for your alcohol percentage. And so I know for a fact that there are breweries out there that will make the same beer under the same label, and it will be different beers from, back to back to back. And, there are times that it can be, a half an alcohol percentage one way or the other. That definitely happens. And so labels, just because they're on the label, doesn't mean they're 100% accurate. It's not lab tested. It's their recipe and their estimation.
Yeah. And that is one thing. We are, the LCB for Washington can come in, test your beer, and if it's outside of a certain percentage, I think we can be plus or minus 0.5% on a beer.
0.5% is kind of the, wiggle room.
After that, they'll be like, all right, guys, don't do it again, make it right. And then the second time, they'll probably fine us. And that's actually different for different alcohols. Yeah. In the hard alcohol industry, it almost has to be exact to what it is. But in the wine industry, I think they have like 1% or something to play with in there.
I'm not sure about the wine industry.
Yeah, a little bit larger than the beer industry. The hard liquor industry definitely has it the worst. They have the most exacting standards. But we can be a little bit off for that, which is great because, as I'm sure some of you homebrewers know, hydrometers are not the most exact. They'll get you within probably 0.1 or 2% if you're good at reading them. So we get a little bit of leeway in that, but not a ton if they check it.
Which doesn't really happen.
Yes.
You'd have to be, honestly, a bigger scale than us if you were to get checked. Your production have to be much, much higher, and you'd have to have a lot higher reach than even like, people in a 10-barrel system that actually have beers out in stores on the regular. It's very, very rare for someone like that to get checked.
Yeah, it's one of those things. If they checked us and we're off, we're going to get a $50 ticket, and it's probably going to cost them more to process it than not. Will they come in and check us? Yeah, they do. They definitely do. Once a year or so, things like that. But they're looking at bigger productions more so than smaller productions.
And what they're looking for us, or people our size, is they're more looking for, things like, making sure we're not giving under 21-year-olds, alcohol, and we have good separation between our production and our service and all that stuff. Also, I got a high from my son apparently, and a dab, I think. That's a dab. Is that a dab emoji?
That's definitely a dab. I mean, it's kind of down on the chest, but I feel like it's supposed to dab.
Dabby. Okay. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so way up here we've got where can I get one of those Imperial hats? I think Logan picked up a bunch of swag when he went and did a video with Imperial, and that's where we got them.
Yeah, we did a YouTube video with them. I would say check the link here, but this is live, so we can't add links in there. But it's in our video library, so definitely check it out. Did a use video with Imperial. They gave us a bunch of stuff, so I wear it around because I enjoy Imperial.
Yeah, also, we love Imperial. They are so Imperial and Wise, by the way, for those of you who don't know. By the way, thank you so much for the super chat, Dane. That's awesome. We really appreciate you. Happy to catch you live. You guys need more subs. Thank you for all the information you put out there. We appreciate that. Yeah, I share with your friends and all that. Imperial and Wine East are actually both about a 5-hour drive away from us. And so when it comes to being a homebrew supply store, they're kind of both obvious choices for us because when it comes to shipping to homebrew supply stores, you have to ship cold yeast. Obviously, they're live cultures, and so you have to ship them cold. And so if we're getting, for example, White Labs, which is out of California, and that's probably the next closest big yeast company is White Labs. and they ship them cold. That'll work great in the winter, even though California is definitely a lot warmer than us in the winter. But in the summertime, you can't really trust yeast that came from California in the summer. Even if there are ice packs and it's in an insulated cooler, if it takes more than a day to get here and it's coming out of California and it's sitting in a hot truck that's 110 degrees, there's no way that yeast is going to be 100% viable by the time it gets to us. And so we love the fact that we have two phenomenal yeast companies, Imperial obviously being our kind of go-to, but both Imperial and Yeast being a 5-hour drive away from here is incredible.
Yeah, we have a great relationship with both of them on there, and it's one of those things. It's not saying that if you're in our local area and you buy White Labs, it's not saying that those are bad yeast cultures at all. It's more saying that for our personal standards, we like that when we get it, the ice packs are still fully frozen,
still frozen, yeah.
and delicious, and we want you to have the best product possible. Basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, let's go down some more questions. What do you see?
Deliveries, will they last after the pandemic? I'm going to say yes.
I think so.
I think that there may be a bigger crackdown on deliveries after I don't think. There will be a bigger crackdown on deliveries after the pandemic, of course. And again, like we said, there are some people who are not quite doing it in the way that they should be. But the guidelines are already there. The laws are already coming into place for it. That it would be a big backtrack in my mind to stop allowing deliveries. So will we see a change in what we can do from the pandemic? Yes. Will deliveries stop? I don't think so.
I think this is going to be a shift in the overall law, at least in our state. Obviously, every state law has a bigger control over what happens in the liquor and beer world than federal law. Federal law is actually pretty loose on most of the liquor and beer things. But yeah, I would expect a shift in our overall state law to allow more deliveries after this blows over, honestly.
Mm-hmm. This is actually a great thing brought up by Joe Schmidt. Thank you. This is an innovative way that breweries are preparing for dealing with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Dealing with the pandemic.
Yeah.
One thing that we're doing right here is we're shifting our brewing styles to accommodate more long-lived beers. And what that basically means is we have stopped brewing beers with short shelf lives. We're not doing juicy IPAs. We're not doing New England hazy IPAs. In fact, just yesterday, we did a Belgian strong ale.
Yeah.
It's
going to be super good.
Oh, man, that thing is going to be amazing. If you're in Spokane, get in here and get it when it's on. I might drink all of it.
It might happen, yeah.
Right, it could. We just filled up 3 wine barrels, 2 of them to be soured, 1 of them to be a wine barrel aged saison at this time.
Also going to be super good. Aged on, what kind of wine must was it?
White Zinfandel.
White Zin, yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing, personally, we are doing things, brewing beers that can have a good shelf life and deal well with being aged. We also have a batch of rye lager that is finishing out, and a Golden Naked Oats lager. I'm actually really excited about that.
That's going to be super fun. It's 40% Golden Naked Oats, is that right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, we'll really get to know what those oats add to it. And I've already noticed, just taking the samples off of the fermenters and bright tanks, that it has a really nice nutty quality to the actual beer, and it's clarifying really well. So it'll have a little bit of that murkiness because oats do have a natural oil content that's going to give it a little bit of that same kind of haze you get from hop haze. But overall, it's turning out to be a really nice, clear beer.
Yeah, that'll be phenomenal. So that's one way that we're doing it. We've also seen a couple of different brewers doing, Brittany Macy's beers and things like that. Things that we can serve soon if we need to, but we'll also benefit from some of the aging. That way we can sit on them for a little while, while this pandemic's going on, and we're not sitting around and doing nothing.
And and we're hopefully basically we can think about it as banking a higher value in beer. Although we don't sell any of our beers for super high prices, so even like our really high percentage beers, we don't sell those for an astronomical amount per 5-ounce glass like some places do. We like to get our beer out there because the bottom line for us is we do like to share our beer, but we will have some beer with a little bit higher value to it when it comes time to reopen.
I just saw something pass by. We're a little bit beyond it now. Brewing beers, blending them to ABV specifics. We don't do that. Some of the big guys do.
Yeah.
That's actually something that the domestics do. And it's one of the reasons that Bud Light tastes the same anywhere in the world that you get it, is they're brewing to numbers
Yeah, they're
more
blending
so
down, yeah.
than recipes.
Same goes with their ingredients, though. They're not buying ingredients by the name of the ingredient. They're buying ingredients by they get their malts, for example, with a percentage of protein content and a percentage of a number of the other small things that they analyze to make sure it's as consistent as possible. Even then, you're relying on a wild beast to ferment your beers, and so blending is a really important part of what they do. We don't do that. We embrace the uniqueness of what happens every batch.
Yeah, I will say that every once in a while we do blended beers.
Absolutely.
We do blend off tap. We think that's a really fun idea to create new flavors, and I know some people are against that, to taste the purity of the beer, which I get that point, but at the same time, when you can create a whole new flavor, it's like ratatouille. You taste the strawberry, you taste the cheese, they're great by themselves, you put them together and you have a whole new flavor, which is awesome.
That's right.
And we do it in the back sometimes. We will blend other beers. We have in works to do an imperial stout, blend in a small batch of Brett stout to it to kind of really give that old
So
world
excited
style.
for that.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. So that's something that we can do, but we would blend more towards flavor than trying to hit
alcohol
specific
percentage.
numbers.
Yeah, that's not the alcohol percentage doesn't really matter to us as long as we make the best possible flavored beer. Also, on top of that, Ratatouille, top 10 animated movies of all time.
I will agree with that.
Throwing that out there.
Straight up there. I mean, there's so many great things in there.
There is.
Linguini is wearing Incredibles boxer shorts.
Yeah.
If you look close enough, he's wearing Incredibles boxer shorts. Tidbit of information if you didn't know.
Which you need to know.
You do need to
You're
know.
welcome.
All right. A couple good comment in there. Adam Campbell, delivery cuts down on drunk driving. Hell yeah, it does. It's pretty darn awesome. I mean, that's a great way to enjoy your stuff at home. We're having a couple run through.
Can't wait for the whole IPA thing to die down. It's nutty and expensive. IPAs are really expensive to make too.
Yes, they are.
But when you make really good ones, it is a really satisfying experience. And so I'm not going to say that we're going to back down from making IPAs just because I love it when we really nail a good IPA.
Spokane area, come in and get some Dactylopius, the juicy IPA right now.
Woo!
It's phenomenal.
So good.
There's not much left. Get it before you drink it.
I'm probably going to drink most of it.
Most of it.
Yeah, you're bad.
Probably. But yeah, they're expensive to make. It's really fun to make them, see what different flavors you can get out of there. But, there are other beers in the world.
Yeah, no, and we love, so strangely enough, being a brewery that loves IPAs as much as we do, we make probably fewer IPAs than most breweries in the area. And the things that we're known for are actually sours and lagers.
Yeah. And lagers, that's actually something that, I won't say that we're surprised to admit that we're good at making them, but it's one of the things that I think was a little bit of a surprise of how many people embrace them.
Yeah, they jumped onto ours for sure. Like, we get known for it.
Yeah, especially in the American market, we have a kind of a bad connotation with lagers just because of the domestics out there. Lager's always attached to it, and people think, oh, lager means light, flavorless beer, and it definitely doesn't. Our most popular lager was a Dortmunder style, which is a really nice kind of toffee, nutty copper lager. I won't say it's quite amber in there, but a copper lager, and people really loved it. And to get to experience different lagers like that. Yeah. Our Schwarzbier was really popular as well, and to be able to introduce people to a style like Schwarzbier outside of Germany, where it's delicious and you guys know
everyone loves
it
there.
But that was really fun, really good. It shows off brewing talent really well, and when you have one that's well made, it is phenomenally delicious.
That's my favorite reason to make lagers, is because they're very difficult to make. And I like that we make both lagers and sours because it shows off that we can do things that not everyone can do, or not everyone is willing to attempt to do.
Yeah.
Because first of all, lagers, for example, take a lot of time. Sours, they take specified brewing equipment, and they take things that make sure that you're being very cautious about what all your you're cleaning and sanitizing in between. But if you do them well and you do them consistently, like, you can create a whole new range of flavors that people that are just drinking beer, beer, they don't necessarily think to look for these new flavors.
Yeah, exactly. Moving down, Matt Morgan, and I'm hoping that's actually you, Matt Morgan. Howdy. What size of system we're using? Actually, kind of a variable question. We have several different fermenters. We primarily produce 1-barrel sizes. A barrel in beer brewing is 31 gallons, basically 2 kegs. We have the ability to do 5-barrel batches as well as 7-barrel batches. We normally reserve our 5-barrel batches for lagers just because in the tank that it's in, shout out to Craftmaster Stainless for your awesome work.
Make some more for us, please.
Do it. It's a tank that we have set up to make lagers beautifully, meaning that we have it on its own glycol system. It's a unitank, so we can ferment under pressure, which is awesome for lagers. Spooned if you're not doing it.
Super clean.
Yeah. So basically, we can make I would say a 45-gallon batch at a time in our main brew house. That would be our size. All right. Let's see. What's next?
Do we bottle our sours? Not yet, but we sure damn will when we get to the next round of barrels going. We do have a lot of bottles ready to go for some of those. I don't know how many we're going to bottle. I think the first round is going to be like a trial. We'll mix, like maybe 5 or 10 gallons into a mixing tank and then bottle off of that. But we won't bottle the whole batch of sours. When we get good at it and we trust our process for bottling, because we do a lot of things on a small batch, then we probably will bottle a lot more of our sours so we can get those out there and also let them sit and age and get vintages going. But that is a project for down the road.
Yeah, I will say on our sours, we have 1 3-year-old established barrel that we do a beautiful slaughter out of. So a lot of our other barrels are new, so we do need... I would say condition them, get them nice, infected, and delicious before we see where we go on the bottles of those sours. See how they react.
Someone asked if we reuse our yeast. Yes, we do. We try to actually build up a lot of our yeast from smaller batches to use for bigger batches, and we never reuse yeast back from higher alcohol batches. And so if a batch is really high alcohol or really hoppy, usually we'll plan ahead and do smaller batches that are lower alcohol and not hoppy to lead into those batches, rather than trying to just use the batch off of whatever it came off of in consecutive beers. We don't trust the growth rate of those yeasts after they've been in really high alcohol beers or hoppy beers, and we don't trust the potential for mutation. So we always plan ahead and do consecutive batches, maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 batches, as long as they're light and really good for growing yeast. Then we'll reuse the yeast into bigger beers rather than the opposite way around.
Yes. We don't really reuse yeast from the same size batch to the next batch often. In fact, we kind of say that 5 times is your limit on that. You just don't know what your yeast is going to be afterwards. But like Peter is saying, we'll make a 5-gallon, we'll jump it up into a 1-barrel, we'll jump that up into a 7-barrel, and kind of get the most out of our yeast that we can at that point while making the proper beer in those steps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bud beer equals the best beer I like to drink when
you did not
I
read
do.
that right.
I like
the beer I like to drink when. Oh wow, I did not read that right. All right,
Bud
next
beer.
one. Omega's in Chicago. Omega yeast has stopped production. We'll have to check on that.
I did not know Omega yeast has stopped production. Ratatouille and Incredibles, both amazing films. Absolutely damn right. Y yeast and Imperial, as far as I know, have not stopped production.
No.
Obviously, being yeast companies, they live in very sanitary practices, and so as long as they can keep sanitary and keep shipping a sanitary yeast, I don't think they necessarily need to work on that. I also think, especially with Imperial, I think they're very small staff, so I don't think social distancing is a big issue in their facility. So our yeast companies, as far as I know, are still operating, but I could be wrong on that. We haven't ordered this week, so could be wrong.
Could be wrong. Yes, lagers are underrated by far. You get a beautiful, beautiful lager. It's one of the most tasty things out there.
So what is it that's different in a lager that makes it tasty? Oh, so much.
Oh, yeah. Jump back further up just for a second. Whole hops to pellet hops. We actually use both. Yeah. Primarily pellet hops, and the reason for that is just being storage. Whole hops are gigantic compared to
They take up a ton of room, and we have a ton of hops. We probably have, I don't know, 1,000 pounds or more of hops. sitting around here. And so if we had 1,000 pounds of whole leaf hops, that would take up an entire room. And pellets, it doesn't. Also, pellets also come in fresher because the pelletizing actually makes a product that is more shelf stable, lower surface area to overall mass. And so the pellet hops stay fresher longer. And because there's not separation, there's not enough room for air to get in. So pellet hops are much more stable.
Yes. All right. Okay. Yeah. What is it that makes lagers so tasty?
Subtleties in the yeast and the malts and the hops, like tiny, tiny nuances that create incredible depth of flavor and intrigue.
Yeah. Very simple way to put it, and that's exactly what it is. Because you're using subtle flavors that come together, it's one of those things where IPA is just kind of a smack in the face of here's some hops, love me. Lagers are like, they're more sensual.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to feel out a lager. You
nice
got to
tickle.
see where the mouthfeel is. You got to experience your whole palate on it. And of course, we're kind of generalizing in this in the lager sense.
The lagers that you intend to be crisp and clean and neutral are those ones that we're talking about. That you get that subtle, that subtle nuances of all the different flavors you can get off of the, esterification of the yeast or super clean tinniness of the yeast. Both of those can play really well with different malt flavors. You can get that, that more intense, sweet malt flavor, or you can get that drier, grainier malt flavor. There's so many things that go on in lagers that when you taste a lot of them, you just kind of learn to love.
Yeah, and it is one of those things, one of the reasons why it's harder to make a lager is there's generally nothing to hide behind. Most of the time, especially in your lighter end lagers, going from pretty much mid-color all the way down on there's nothing to hide behind. If you have a brewing flaw, it's right up there out front. Everybody can see it, and we can all taste it. You have to really brew well for that cleanness that comes through.
And I really liked your analogy where, with the sensual, like I think lagers are sensual foreplay, and like IPAs are kind of like a threesome.
Yeah, both are fantastic. Some people might like this over that, but it's one of those things. I mean, do you want to have a nice, good 2-hour, like maybe a little massage in there, some hot rocks,
right?
Or do you just want to get after it and
be
know
really
what you're
exhausted
getting into?
in 5 minutes?
Exactly. All right, Scotch ale style nummy, drink them. They're awesome.
Yeah, there's a ton of Scotch ale styles. One of the, you'd be surprised. The lightest Scotch ale style actually can go down to 2.8%. So Scotch ale styles generally are leaning towards, let's just throw really nice maltiness and fruitiness from the yeast at the same kind of beer. And so they're intensely flavored no matter how light they are. So it's definitely not something I can drink all the time, but Scotch ale style, I don't understand the question, but yeah.
We're talking about it. I'm going to throw this in there that in these style guidelines, smoke is inappropriate. For you people who don't understand the difference between Scotch whiskey and Scotch ale, they're not peated malt into it.
Nope.
Not to say that isn't delicious, because I'll definitely get down on it and we do it. But
it tastes good. It's just not a Scotch ale.
But dang it, there's a difference between whiskey and ale.
That's right.
All right.
Someone's drinking Terrapin. Again, send us some, please.
Send us some. Opinion on Omega yeast. No, we got bootleg. I don't think we've gotten Omega.
We have not used Omega yeast, actually. We've gotten bootleg biology, and we use those in our original Solera barrel, which I thought was, our original Solera barrel, I think, creates the best sours in town. Like everything that's come off that barrel is super, super delicious, and a lot of what went into that was bootleg biology. So shout out to whatever. A lot of it was also dregs from beers, so I don't know how we managed to make it as good as it is, but
the miracle of biology.
Right.
Omega yeast, we've heard great things about Omega yeast. I wouldn't put it against them. They're just on the East Coast, if I remember correctly.
It's hard for us to get East Coast yeast because, like we said, especially in the summertime, we're not going to rely on shipping that takes 2 days to get here if it's 110 degrees outside.
Yes, exactly. Quack yeast. Quack yeast are phenomenal. Absolutely love them for so many different applications. I will say quack yeast is turning to be one of my favorite yeast for kettle sours.
Yeah.
Provides all of those good extra flavors that the German ales and the Belgian ales will produce as well, as well as producing extra flavors that you wouldn't normally have in there.
And they can supplement things like hazy IPAs or juicy IPAs really well in a short amount of time because they create those same kind of flavor. And the one that we use, by the way, is usually I think the Voss strain is the Loki, right?
Voss. We use Imperial Loki, which is Voss.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. We make our local IPA with it. Get
Yeah.
that sucker done in 5 days. You get so many fresh hop flavors out of it. That's phenomenal. And flavors that you can't get from other yeasts.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
course.
Yeah, if you want to create a lot of flavor in a beer with not a lot of other stuff, like using a quake yeast, especially the Voss that we use, is really good.
I'm going to stop you for a minute. Andy, I'm just reading this right now.
Is it about to go away?
No, I have a packet of Voss that you need to overbuild the starter. Okay, never mind. I didn't read it all. So you can bank it in your fridge. Yes. This is something I'm going to bring up with Quake right now. Do not overbuild your starter. Do not make a proper starter.
Don't need it.
You don't need it. Throw as little bit in as you can, and it's going to produce all those great flavors.
But do add a ton of yeast nutrient if you want a great fermentation. Yeah, you really need to, like, that's, we have to, your wife's comment was censored.
IPAs are like a threesome. Nice. Oh, we have to see those. Yeah. Show it.
That's awesome.
She just came
Doug
back
Wilson,
on
by the
it,
way,
yeah.
thank you so much for the super chat. We appreciate it.
Heck yes.
Anything to avoid when brewing with lactose? The things that I avoid when I'm brewing with lactose, basically, I always add lactose about 5 minutes before the end of the boil. The only thing that I really try to avoid is adding it too early because it increases the rate of caramelization of the other sugars that are in the boil. That's about all, at least that I know of. Don't add it dry.
Kalos PVP. You brought up a kind of good point in there. The bacteria, most of the time, is not actually going to ferment the lactose in there. What it's going to be is Brettanomyces.
Yeah, there are very few bacteria that can break down lactose.
Yeah, it is an unfermentable sugar, so most yeast and bacteria are not going to break it down. There are a few that are out there, so it's not all of them. Brettanomyces will eat lactose. If you put Brett or a mixed fermented sour and lactose, that is going to be a gusher that will explode. So, whole hops lower the utilization efficiency. I would say a little bit, yes.
Usually, yeah.
Just because of surface area. In pelletized hops, there's such little particles that the beer can contact it better, where in whole hops, you have the whole cone in there. Sometimes the inside won't get as wet as the outside and things like that. So for surface area, 100%, there's better utilization in pellets.
It's a big topic, but basically there are reasons to use both. A lot of times we'll use whole cones as kind of a dual purpose, both to filter out all the excellent utilization we got off of our pellet hops and also to filter out all the grassy material that can lead to off flavors from the pellet hops, which the whole hops don't necessarily have. Whole hops have a delightful, delicate flavor that that we use them both. A lot of times if we're just doing one or the other, it's going to be pellet hops, but at the same time, if you're doing a big IPA like the one that I just drank, using both can give you a lot of good flavors.
Yeah, along with a hopback. That's actually something that we discovered with this juicy IPA that was phenomenal. And it makes sense when we talk about it, but it's one of those things that you don't...
I'm going to get more.
Do it. Most of it was pellet hops, and we put them in there into the boil and things like that. In the very end, where the whole leaves came in, was actually in a hop back. So we threw them into our hop back and then recirculated it around in the whirlpool. And at that point, the hop back and the whole leaf hops was acting as a filter bed for our pellet hops, which is one of the reasons that I believe this particular beer came out so clean. No grassiness to it, no chlorophyll flavors coming out at all.
It is delicious.
Because those extra whole leaf hops added that filter bed, and none of the particulates ended up into the fermenter.
Doing a virtual brew day on April 5th and doing a Scotch ale.
Ooh.
That sounds fun.
High fives?
Yeah. Let us know. We'll tune in. We'll see it.
Oh.
Slight difference now.
He was talking about, he did a beer with whole leaves and pellets, and it came out to be the same IBU.
Oh, cool.
And depending on your size, kind of be expected on that. Smaller homebrew sizes, of course, you have less going in, so there's less utilization in that. If you took a 100-barrel size and used whole leaf versus pellets, you would probably see a difference in IPA, but it takes that massive amounts of volume to start getting a difference.
Yeah. What was I just reading? Would we ever consider U-Brew as a portion of our business? So that business model has actually failed a couple of times in Spokane. So the short answer is no, but the long answer is maybe. U-Brew is kind of interesting, especially in the state of Washington, with how the legal portion of that goes. But the biggest reason why no, at least for right now, is that we're diverting our attention in a lot of different ways, and we don't have enough energy / people here. It's pretty much just Tim, Logan, and myself that do the majority of the on-site work. We have a couple of employees that do a lot of help as well. But in terms of building new models, there's not a lot of energy. We haven't done a good enough job at the models that we're currently pursuing, I guess is the best way to put it, to try to take something new on.
We're stretched a little bit thin in what we're doing. So that is an option that is still on the table, but not something we are pursuing at this time. Omega is in Chicago. Good to know. I could say for us West Coasters, that's pretty much close to East Coast.
Yeah.
If you really said Chicago to me, I think would immediately think East Coast, but it definitely is Midwest.
The bottom line is, I think, 2-day shipping.
2 days. We think about the health yeast, and we get extreme on this. Again, if you are on the West Coast, order some Omega yeast. It is good yeast. We get
West Coast apparently being Chicago and over.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Quack Lager. This is something that we are going to experiment with.
Absolutely.
We'll probably throw something up in some sort of social media form. Have heard a whole bunch about Quack Lagers, how people are doing them.
Yep.
And that's the wonderful thing about Quack yeast. You can ferment it at 100 degrees. You can ferment it at like 50 degrees. And this sucker is still going to ferment all the way out. And a Quack Lager, you could still ferment it up into 80, 90 range and create a very clean and clear beer.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that especially is exciting to see in the homebrew, or not even homebrew, but in the brewing world. To see what we can do with Quack. It's cool. It's awesome. It's exciting. It's still pretty new for exacts. I shouldn't say it's new. It's, hundreds, thousands of years old. But at least in the American brewing market, it's new enough that we don't have exact data yet.
Ultimate experience, Quake Raw Lager.
Ooh.
And I think it's possible. We're probably going to try it at some point. But just regular Quack Lagers, we actually do have that on the docket. That's on the brew schedule. It will happen soon.
It will, definitely.
But add the raw in there. There are methods. We know methods. We've got our things.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. I saw you over there too. Definitely stop in. I'm talking to
Kosuke.
I was going to say Kisuke for a while, but that
Kusuke.
definitely was right. That wasn't right. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting Bardic as well. They are amazing people.
Kusuke's from Emperor's New Groove.
Yes, Cusco.
Yeah.
Cusco. Kisuke is from Bleach.
Okay.
He's the striped hat guy.
Got you.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
So much cartoons to keep up on.
Yeah.
If you don't have temperature control.
Synsanic.
If you don't have fermentation temperature control. Quake it.
Quake it. Exactly, 100%. If you don't have fermentation control at home.
In the summer, it's perfect.
Brewing in the summer, hit it with Quake. In all honesty, it's a beautiful yeast for any beer style, of course. All right.
Dudes, I live in South Central Kansas. Tell me about how hard it is to get yeast. I have no idea.
Oh, man. I don't.
I'll be honest, in terms of all ingredients being in Washington, we are super, super lucky. The majority of the malt that we get is actually grown really, really close to us. Obviously, the majority of the hops in the world are grown 3 hours from us. And the yeast companies that we use are a solid 5 to 6 hour drive from us. So,
yes. I will say it's one of the things we get spoiled for in being here, especially being in the brewing industry. The Pacific Northwest is really known for being a craft beer center. So a lot of the industries do happen to be here. And we just happen to be in one of the best hotspots in the world, which is pretty darn awesome.
Yeah.
So, you probably have a hard time getting some yeast. I would agree with that. Multiple yeast in one brew. Great question, Joe. Yes, 100%. If you want to get 2 different flavor profiles from yeast. Using multiple yeast is a great thing. In fact, Imperial Yeast has one of my favorite IPA yeast to use, Dry Hop.
Yeah.
That is a combination of 2 different yeasts. They're citrus yeast and they're Barbarian. Barbarian being the Conan strain, being the actual official New England hazy IPA
The original,
strain,
the Heady Topper strain.
The Heady Topper strain. Citrus is a very, very, as it says, citrusy.
Formerly Brett's Trois, now Sactois.
Now Sactois. If you saw things about Brett Trois and you want those flavors, use citrus because that's what it is. Fermented at 90, it's going to be beautiful.
Beautiful. Loves being warm, but yeah, that's a blended yeast that has great characters from both sides. That haziness and that almost like subtle, soft fruitiness you get from the Barbarian side of it, and that kind of brighter pop you get from the pseudo Brett strain that they have, the Sactois, in the citrus. And so we've also do that for high alcohol beers a lot.
That's a very common one. We'll use the yeast that we want character from first, and then we'll finish it out with a high gravity neutral strain just to get all the alcohol out of it.
Yep.
I also personally like to blend some soft Belgian strains with Saison strains.
Absolutely,
Blending Ardennes with a Belgian Saison I think is absolutely beautiful. You get those good bubblegummy flavors with that really sharp phenolic spicy flavors. And again, it is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. And that's actually how some of these brewers came up with their house strains.
Yeah.
Chico strain is a modification of another strain on there. They just used it so often it became a house strain when it mutated, and they keep it nice and healthy and viable. So it's a beautiful thing to do. Definitely do it if you're looking for different flavors coming out of your beers.
Do we top crop? No, we don't. We don't have the technology.
No.
We would love to. We do not have the power currently, or at least not to do it cleanly. We would love to do it when we can get an open fermenter or some sort of open fermenting system, or at least a system that is easily openable. But at the same time, and top cropping, it's a great way to harvest yeast and get super, super healthy pitches into future batches, even with smaller technical pitches. Like top cropping is an awesome technique. We just don't have the technology to do it correctly.
Obviously, it's an awesome technique, considering Firestone Walker and a lot of the Burton-upon-Trent people use it. The Firestone Walker and the Burton-upon-Trent, it's based on a system that's called the Trent Union system. Firestone Walker calls it the Firestone system. But it's basically a system where you brew so full in your fermenter that your yeast, that would be the top cropping yeast, is pushed up and out of the fermenter into a trough that all goes down to be reharvested and used in a new beer.
They have whole rooms and buildings dedicated to it.
Yeah, awesome thing to do. We don't, like Peter said, just because we don't have the technology to. So.
We could do it if we had, honestly, it doesn't take a whole room or a whole system, but it does take some sort of a closed environment, and that's the part that we don't have, is a perfectly closed environment. So for that reason, we don't do it.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Cheers to Connecticut. Dave, I see you there.
Thank you so much, by the way, Joe, for the super chat. Pint on me. Nice. I like it. This one. Cheers. We appreciate that. Honestly, we do. Have you guys created a beer style that we can consider unique to us?
Not fitting in an existing style. Oh, man.
There's a lot that we do that I feel like is super unique. We do things that are different than other people do them, but I don't know if we can consider a style uniquely ours yet.
I would say that there are styles in our local area that we are known for that you don't see other breweries doing.
Right.
Most typically is our coffee light beers. We make a coffee Kolsch that people go nuts over. And I know there's a few of them out there. White stouts are a thing. This is a little bit different than a white stout. But as far as the Spokane area goes, the greater kind of 509 area, that's something that we're uniquely known for.
Yeah.
As
and
well.
we do it differently than anybody else that I know of that doesn't.
We're known for cereal beers. We kind of started the cereal craze in Spokane, and I'm not going to say kind of. We're taking credit for that. There's not another Spokane brewer who did it before us. I will say we did it in collab with Four Eyed Guys, so shout out to Alex for helping us.
Yeah. And we've done other ones in combination with Nat 20 Brewing Company as well.
Yes.
Like we do a lot of collabs with those cereal beers. They're really fun. They're not unique to us, but they are something that I think we kind of we took the mantle a little bit.
Yeah, and honestly, I will also say sour IPAs. Again, not a new style, but in our area, there wasn't anybody doing it and doing it well. You might have seen one or two that you're like, oh, okay, I like the gimmick of this.
I know No Lie did one before us, and it was good. It was a good beer, don't get me wrong. But when we first launched our sour IPAs, the strawberry Nesquik. Oh, that was such
Talking about
a good
Quake.
beer.
Sour IPA on your Quake.
We did,
Get after it.
We did a sour milkshake strawberry IPA. It was such an incredible, refreshing beverage. Like, forget beer, forget IPAs, forget Quake beers, forget milkshake beers, whatever. It was such a refreshing beverage that I think that uniquely set us apart from anything that's been done in the Spokane area.
I will say that in particular beer was unique from any other sour IPA that I've had as well.
Yeah.
Taking the concept of milkshake, and in all honesty, I think Quake is really what kind of pushed it over the edge. It had a drying quality to the beer, but it's still a little bit sweet. You have that fruitiness. The hops are there, which balances out the bitterness. Yeah. Perfect level of acidity. It's like a great lemonade on a 100-degree day. You reach over, grab it, drink it, and go, this is just the best thing I can put in my face hole right now.
You can't beat it. Yeah. You just got to do it.
I would say those three styles in particular, we excel at, and in our area, there's not people
doing the same thing,
doing it quite as well as we do. I'm going to throw this out to, for the love of God, he does make a pretty good cereal IPA.
Yeah.
The Fruit Loops Milkshake IPA, that's pretty darn tasty.
There are other breweries in the area that do, honestly, all those styles well as well.
Yeah.
I think that's just the style that we kind of became known for, with our audience.
Exactly. But outside of stack fermentation, okay. Raw lager, Joe Schmidt, good question. Raw beer. So raw, it basically means unboiled and unpasteurized. You never reach pasteurization temps beyond what you're doing for your, I guess you do reach pasteurization temps because of your mash.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you do it for long enough, and depending on the mash temperature. So there's a calculation between 150, I think it takes all of like 10 to 12 minutes to pasteurize.
Yeah.
So there's a correlation between temperature and time to get to full pasteurization. So mashes technically do get pasteurized, but because of the time, not the temperature.
Yes, but we never boil. This is actually something that we do fairly frequently, and I would say all the time, actually, for our kettle sours.
Yeah.
And it adds a whole new dimension to it because you don't get protein break and because you're not boiling it off and getting some other flavors. It adds more dimensions, especially to your kettle sours. It's one thing personally for myself, as a sour person, that kettle sours most of the time are, can you look at this face? So it's most of the time one of the things that I'm frustrated about in kettle sours is they're so one-dimensional. Like, okay, cool, I can put a bunch of lemon acid into a beer too and call that a kettle sour, but that's not what it should be.
Yeah, exactly.
The rawness of it adds extra flavors, adds different aspects to the beer that you wouldn't normally experience from other doing it other ways and boiling.
Right. And it adds a surprising texture. A lot of times you would think that it would add like more or less head retention depending on what you do when you boil because you get the protein break. But the rye ales, a lot of the things that you would expect to necessarily break out during protein break, they actually ferment out. And so you end up with a really nice, smooth, subtle, light texture. So you would expect normally rye ales to be like high protein, like super heady, puffy, whatever. But rye ales actually come out really light and crisp. They don't have the head retention you'd think because of how those proteins go through fermentation.
Yeah, and that is actually one thing too, especially in the kettle sours, because kettle sours are known for getting really dry, and the acidity exacerbates that a little bit. That having that extra protein in the raw ale helps keep body and mouthfeel into your beer, into your kettle sour in the end. So that's pretty darn nice.
Yeah. Someone says Lallemand has dry quake in Europe. We have not seen that, and that sounds great. So, again, send us some.
Right, send us some. I saw one up here. Ever attempted clones? So, yes and no. There are times that we do attempt to make a specific style of beer for specific things. I won't say necessarily that we do clones because we do like to add our own spin on it, but we do have a Wisconsin-style cream ale that...
Yeah, based on Spotted Cow.
You know, we may have called it Patchy Pig. Is that a good name? No. But one of those things, we have a local restaurant in town called Wisconsin Burger, and he was complaining that he couldn't get Spotted Cow anymore. And so we tried to make something very similar to kind of satiate his need.
That's one thing that we tell everybody that comes in that asks for clone recipes is that you can't perfectly do a clone. A lot of that comes down to the system that you use. Even if you have the exact same ingredients in the exact same recipe, what you do, because you have character, and this is something to be proud of and something to be happy about, but you have character in how you brew. And so if you do the exact same recipe as somebody else, you should make a different beer, and you should be happy about the fact that you are making a different beer. So clone recipes, we don't necessarily like that term 100%, but yes, we have made very many inspired beers. I guess
that's probably the best way to put it. Shameless plug. Go watch our video on why you can't trust clone recipes. Actually, a very good concept to this too. We made this one of the videos in that has a brown ale made with brown malt from 3 different producers, and they're all 3 wildly different beers. And so there's also this concept to clones, because you don't know what ingredients they're actually using. They could say 2-row pale ale. Okay, right. Well, is that U.S.? And in the U.S., does that what manufacturer does that come from? Because that's going to be wildly different.
There's several different people that make 2-row pale in the U.S.
Yeah, I believe the brown ale, the brown malts that we use, all came from England.
Yep.
And they're all incredibly different. So
if you didn't look into it, you would think that they should be the same beer based on the recipe, but your homebrew supply store or wherever you get your malts from, they have one style of brown malts. If you get multiple styles of brown malt, you can make... So basically there are an insane amount of permutations of beers that you can make, even with the exact same recipe. And that all goes into... That all goes into why you can't clone, but also why you shouldn't worry about it. Because if you make good beer and you learn the recipes and the ingredients that are at your resources, that you have resource to, that words didn't make sense.
You're saying the right thing. If you're making great beer,
don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Yeah.
So learn what resources you have access to. Learn your malts, honestly. Like, do single malts, do 2 malt beers, and learn what flavors the malts that you have access to taste like, and then craft beers around the flavors that you know are going to taste good in your beer in the final product.
Exactly. Count Druncula. Good call. Burton Union System, not the Trent Union System. That's my mistake there. And yes, if any of you guys have not seen Yorkshire Squares yet and the fermentation on that, it's awesome. Oh, yeah. Those things are beautiful, incredible. I mean, those guys have some talent to do that kind of stuff. We would love to be able to do it, but have some space limitations.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, eventually. Sometime. All right, let's go down a little bit. Are Yorkshires good? Okay, yeah, you answered that in the questions right there. Yes, Yorkshire Squares are they're the fermenting vat in there, and the Bigfoot fermentation time lapse. He's talking about, I believe, Sierra Nevada. Sierra Nevada uses some Yorkshire Squares open fermentation for some of their beers. All right. So do you bring it back up to pasture? Oh no, Andy. Good question on that. No. Most of the time, we don't bring it back up to pasteurization temp to kill off the lacto on that. There will be sometimes that, depending on the beer, we will bring it to thermal death of lacto, which is actually 130. 130 on that. Yeah, right, not quite pasteurization. Depending on the
strain. There are some strains of lacto that can live up to 150, but most strains die at 130.
Yeah. So sometimes we'll bring it to thermal death, but in all honesty, most of the time we don't. We actually just drop it down, throw the yeast in, make sure our yeast pitch is healthy enough to outcompete some of the lacto that's in there, so we don't get a whole bunch of butyric acid production.
Right.
Because that's what you want to avoid. If your kettle sours taste like barf, put it down the drain, or put Brettanomyces in it and see if it helps. It will.
Because YOLO.
You know, Brett. Certain strains of Brett will convert butyric acid into some other acids.
Yeah.
But it's not reliable, so don't trust that to save your beer. Don't produce butyric to start out with.
That's the best way to go. Also, there are some strains that don't produce butyric in the first place. Plantarum and Buchneri are two that don't very easily produce it. Plantarum doesn't produce it at all. Buchneri does not produce it below a certain temperature or above a certain temperature. So, focus on that.
Yeah, exactly.
I have really bad eyesight, so I'm like trying to read, and I've been like concentrating for a long amount of time. You have way better eyesight than I am.
Oh man,
I haven't got new glasses. I haven't got new glasses in like 4 years, and so I'm squinting so hard to like try to read these comments.
All right, a couple of Wisconsin things on there. That spotted cow is overrated. Best thing around is spotted cow. So beers like this is actually something to go into. Beers that are famous in local regions. This is a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
Some people absolutely and utterly love them, and some people really do not. And in all honesty, I think what this really starts to come down to is oversaturation.
That's a big part of it, yeah.
An example that I use all the time is Deschutes. Being in the Pacific Northwest, Deschutes is a gigantic brewery. I shouldn't say gigantic. They're a big regional brewery.
They are gigantic by
by
like,
our standards, at least.
Yeah, they're a step down from like Stone and Sierra Nevada, but not much.
But not much. Phenomenal beer coming out of there. In fact, Black Butte Porter is pretty much the style definition of American Porter.
Right.
I mean that literally. It's almost the exact style definition of American Porter. Being in the Pacific Northwest, where we see Black Butte, see the Deschutes all the time.
Deschutes, everywhere.
Everywhere. They're in all the bars. And I find myself every once in a while skipping over and being like, yeah, that's a great beer, but I can get that everywhere, and like, let me go over to this, which might be better. But then if you have them in blind tastings or really stack them up against each other, the Deschutes is going to be so much more better. But we see it so
much more better.
More better. It's an official term. Official
term.
But we see it so much that we get that market saturation where we start to think of it as a little bit lesser because we're searching for the different things.
I went through a phase where I actively avoided. I mean, in our area we see Deschutes a lot. We see Sierra Nevada a lot. We see New Belgium a lot.
Yeah.
Like all those.
Fremont is a huge one.
Fremont is, and they are really good. So these are beers that are. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, it's so overrated. Oh, that's so like it's not a good beer," especially with Deschutes. But Deschutes, I would say honestly, is the king of beers that will be good on the shelf.
Yes.
And part of that is because they actually bottle condition.
Yes.
But they have the best shelf stable beers, and if you were pulling a beer off the shelf, Deschutes is one of the I would put them over all the other beers that I mentioned. But all those beers are really, really good, and so you can't necessarily overrate. Those beers that are on the shelves. Some of them, like 10 Barrel, you can and be like, oh yeah, that's gonna be a shitty beer.
That's just kind of don't drink Crush. It's full of barf.
Yeah.
I didn't say that. So that's one thing to bring up. And everybody's entitled to their own opinion, so I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong on that. But it's one of those interesting things to see with the market saturation going on, that old standbys are starting to fall further down the list, even though they might technically
really
be
good.
a better beer, just because we can get them all the time now.
Right. Yeah, and that kind of makes me sad a little bit, but at the same time, I know that the market is craving new beers, and that's a big thing that we do. We aim for new beers all the time. We don't make the same beer twice, which is a big part of kind of our marketing strategy when it comes to being a smaller local brewery. So we make new beers all the time, but at the same time, I don't want people to forget that there are really good beers out there that that you can see all the time that are available to you.
Yeah, of course.
But I don't want them to think that that's Crush.
No. Don't think that that's Crush, because that is not a good beer.
Yeah.
When I say butyric acid, that's what I'm talking about in barf. It's one thing I cannot stand in sours. If you ferment lacto a little bit too low, it creates this type of acid, which is literally bile. It's the same thing that's created in your gallbladder, and it tastes like barf. If you ever taste that in a kettle sour, that is an improperly made beer, and just send it back. Don't drink it again. All right, rant over. Next guy.
Yeah, anyways.
All right, I just saw
Someone,
one.
by the way, between Andy and Joe, one of you guys send me Spotted Cow, and then we'll taste it and see if it's overrated or not.
That's right.
Also, we should compare it to our clone.
Exactly.
Our clone came from, so I had Spotted Cow about 3 years ago. That's the only time that I've had Spotted Cow. But I could not, I've had probably tens of thousands of beers in my lifetime. I cannot remember what Spotted Cow tastes like. So
Yeah,
if you want to see Spotted Cow versus our clone version of Spotted Cow.
Yeah. How about both of you send it to us? Right?
Be
all right.
fun.
Smoothie style beers. This is actually an interesting beer to talk about. Yes, we have. Technically, the Strawberry Nesquik, the sour IPA that we were talking about, could be included into that.
Yeah.
Smoothie style beers generally goes into milkshake IPAs and then fruited milkshake IPAs. That's what we're mostly thinking about the smoothie part. And in that, the main thing that makes it smoothie-ish is going to be your lactose
You're
sugar.
relying on a ton of the milkshake is the lactose. The fruit is the smoothie part. But yeah, you're relying on a really aggressive flavor to come off of that fruit to be a major part of the beer. So whereas you can't have a milkshake IPA that has a subtle hint of fruit, a smoothie beer is very, very reliant on the fruit flavor to be part of that beer.
Part of that beer. I would say the first milkshake IPA that we ever made, which is a blackberry milkshake IPA, that was a smoothie IPA.
That was a smoothie IPA, yeah, for sure.
We concentrated the blackberries down actually into more of a molasses, as well as adding vanilla in there, and really kind of pushing that almost like milkshake. Like you're literally sitting in an old-fashioned.
That's what you're going for.
Spokane Peeps, Wolfies, milkshake. The old school milkshakes on that. So we've made a few of those. They're pretty darn good. I think that they can get overplayed, and in my personal sense, a lot of the commercial ones for me get overly sweet, and for my drinking buds, I just can't. My drinking taste buds, I can't do tons and tons of sweet beer on there. So it's fun. For me, it's fun. It's novel. It's great to see those flavors coming out in beer, seeing what people are doing with it.
Right.
I don't drink a ton of it, but I will drink it. Definitely.
And it is beer. So there are some people out there that think that smoothie and milkshake beers and fruited beers are not beer. They are beer. They're just a different style. And that's what we love about beer in general. We love the fact that the bigger you can create flavors, the more bold you can create flavors, the more out there you can go, the more that it kind of falls into our realm, our beer realm. And so we want those all to be included because we want that creative capacity to do whatever the hell we want.
Yes, exactly. Now, what we would prefer is that people do these beers right. You're not making a hazy IPA by dumping a sack of flour into it. You, sir, are a jerk. But creating these flavors in a good way that's going to enhance everybody's drinking experience instead of just like, hey, here's a trend, let me jump on it. Jump on it.
Jump on it.
Yeah.
Live in Wisconsin, and New Glarus is not my favorite. But love New Glarus, but New Spotted is not my favorite. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. And again, everybody's entitled to their opinions. They
also,
love it.
send us beer so we can help.
Definitely send
help
us.
you judge if you need.
Hashtag Genus, rate my beer.
Yeah. Did you see Brewdog Stolen Loaf? I did not see that. Have you seen Stolen Loaf from Genus? Or from Brewdog?
Stone Wolf.
Stolen Loaf.
Stolen Loaf.
Stolen Loaf from Brewdog.
No, I haven't.
That sounds like a kvass almost, but I have no idea.
That would be my guess, considering that kvass is a beer that's made with bread.
Yeah.
Which is a cool thing to actually start coming out. It's this is I just read Mo Betta. Sorry about that. So this is something that's starting to come back is ancient ales. And you've seen Dogfish Head have these ancient ales coming out all the time, but it's becoming in mainstay brewing, which is really cool. Seeing our old brewing styles and concepts from hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, coming back into main
be revitalized,
brewing. Yeah.
And reinvented, too, because obviously new breweries have all the technology that people thousands of years ago did not have.
Where at the time that they were making these beers, they're like, hey, I know if I chuck this loaf of bread into it, it's going to ferment. We're like, all right, we know exactly why it's going to ferment, what we can add to it to make it in better. So things like that. It's really awesome to see. Which again, if you're in Spokane area, go over to the Grain Shed. They have one of those on tap. Also taste their locally malted malts and breads.
So Bud Miller or Coors. Coors is my go-to, but at the same time, we did a video where we blind tasted light beers, and I picked Coors once and Bud once, unfortunately. So I'm still sticking with Coors as my favorite, but apparently I can't tell the difference as much as I would hope to think I can.
I'm going for option D, and that would be Hams.
Hams, or Rainier.
Rainier. I mean, Rainier fits a little bit. If you mispronounce my last name, you get Rainier. So, might as well.
Right. Is it legal to send beer via mail? It sure is, sort of.
Yes and no. Not by U.S. mail.
There's a Homebrew for Life video on how to send beer by mail. I've linked it in a couple other videos, but if you look up Homebrew for Life, or if you look up how to mail beer, they'll probably pop up. Yeah, support their channel too. They're doing an awesome job. They're super funny. Yeah. They text me sometimes. Don't declare your beer. It should be fine. Call it a yeast sample. You guys hate flour in your beer? What the hell? I'm a staunch B guy. No. We're talking about like if you buy like white flour.
Literally, there are some brewers out there. It's one of the things, if you've ever heard your local brewers say they hate making hazy IPAs, the reason for that being is it actually encourages bad brewing processes. To make a hazy IPA, you have to set up situations that creates things you normally don't want in your beer.
Right.
And there are some people who get around that by literally taking a bag of white flour and right before packaging, going into the keg or bottles, dump that bag of flour into the beer to make it hazy. So that's what we're talking about. Brew in the bag, no, we got nothing against you guys. In fact, we'll encourage it.
Yeah, we actually have a whole video saying, hey, brew in a bag versus buying a cooler mash tun. Go brew in a bag, before, and focus on things like buying a super fancy fermenter before focusing on buying a super fancy mash tun.
Yeah. Next question, what is Brett? That's going to bring us back to A. Joyce, actually. Any recommendations on how to age a Brett? All right, Brett, let's come back to let's get on this first. Brett is short for Brettanomyces. There's several different forms of Brettanomyces. It is a yeast, but Brett is normally what makes funky sour beers. When we think of true Belgian sours or mixed fermented sours, Brett is going to be your biggest flavor component of that. Gives you a lot of barnyard, horse blankets.
Sometimes fruity and pineapple flavors too. Bubblegum is a common one with Brett. But it very much depends on the flavor and also depends on the temperature that Brett is fermented.
And the type of Brett that it is and where that Brett actually came from. There is Brett Brooks. Who is it right now? It might be Bootleg. But there is one of the yeast companies out there that actually has 3 different types of Brett Brooks. Same strain, but the way that this Brett Brooks has been raised will give you different flavors coming off of it. So Brettanomyces, when people say farmhouse ales and wild ales, there's a lot of Brettanomyces that goes, again, it's kind of a generalization here, so don't take this as gospel, but that's kind of what you're thinking about when you think about Brett. Farmyard flavors, barnyard flavors, as
Sweaty
well as
goat is my favorite flavor descriptor of some Brett.
I don't want to drink that. Yes, you do. Yes,
Trust
you do.
me, it's good.
And then it also produces acids with more time, as well as we talked about those good, fun, fruity flavors.
Yeah.
Coming to the Saison Brett question, that actually kind of depends on you and what's going on. There is a certain point when you can bottle it. When Brett has got it down to a certain sugar percentage, you can bottle it after that, and it will continue to develop. But Brettanomyces can live for a long time. I think the Milk the Funk Wikipedia is a great resource for this. Shout out to Milk the Funk, because these guys are awesome for especially gathering all of this information into one space. I know that there's been Brett revived from a 100-year-old bottle before. Revived. They found a bottle of beer at the bottom of the ocean,
still had live cells
out, and made beer with it. It's amazing. So Brett can last a long time. It does continue to develop, and how you treat it will depend on how it develops. The warmer it is, the more fruity and acidic it gets. The cooler it is, like cellar temperatures, the more funky it's going to get.
Yeah.
But that's kind of all on you. Do you love where it's tasting? Package it and drink it right away. I would also suggest hang on to a few bottles for
split it off.
years.
Do some for aging and some for packaging right now. The stock answer is 3 months. If you want to get that nice kind of blend of farmhouse and still freshness going on, 3 months is kind of the stock answer. But there's so many different things that can go on that it's not an exact question. If you age it super, super warm, you can get really good flavors probably in 3 to 4 weeks, and then they probably won't come back around to be really good for over a year. If you ferment it really, really cold, it probably won't be good for 3 to 4 months. And then, the come around back time after it starts to die back off might not be for a couple, 2-3 years. So
Brett is it's very unpredictable. There's a range in where these flavors develop, but it is unpredictable, which makes it really fun in my opinion. Of course, you can do 100% Brett beers. If you do 100% Brett beers, the flavors actually develop a lot quicker and differently than they would if they're thrown into different parts of
Sometimes it can be like
co-fermentation.
dry champagne-y if you ferment them like at a regular temperature. If you ferment them super cold or super warm, they can sometimes be really, really good right off the bat. But in the middle, for whatever reason, sometimes it ends up being like champagne-y.
Brett, I always... I used to call it something, and now I kind of forgot what it was. But there is a point in there when Brett really starts to take hold that the beer will actually lose all of its flavor.
Yeah.
It's really weird. It happens to almost all Brett beers, but if you taste a beer you're using Brettanomyces in it and it doesn't have a flavor, don't worry, let it sit, because that's going to be amazing. That means Brett is really starting to work on something fun.
Yeah.
So there's a point before that that's going to be delicious, and then after that it's going to be delicious, and it'll just keep evolving through the years.
It goes in cycles. So if you taste it and it's bad at some point in time, just save it. Taste it again later.
That's the best thing you can do is save it for later. Now, if there's something like super intrinsically bad with it, if it smells like barf and then Brett's been on it for at least probably 6 weeks to 6 months,
that might be something else going on. Yeah.
Chuck it. Now, like I said, you can recover some kettle sours with Brettanomyces, but again, Brett is a little bit unpredictable, so don't count on it. But it is a very, very fun thing to use.
Yeah.
So,
all right. What fruits are best in milkshake IPAs? Berries are the easiest. That's about all I can say. There's a lot of fruits that are good in milkshake IPAs. Berries are the easiest to use.
Yes. Also, think about what hops you're going to use with that. So you can condition your hops. I shouldn't say condition. You can plan out your hops to accentuate the berry flavors that are coming through. And that's honestly what I really recommend. You're going to use berry flavors. Galena, Bravo are really good hops to use with that because they have very berry flavors coming out of it.
Comet. Yeah.
Comet. So if you want to put papaya or guava or mango into a beer, using some of the New Zealand hops would be perfect for that.
Yeah, or even a little bit of citra, like something to just kind of brighten it up a little bit, like a little bit of that dankness, you know?
Yeah. Actually,
let's go with it.
Throwing citrus fruits in there. Think about going into the dankness rather than going like citra into it. Think about going a little bit heavier into like Columbus. Exactly. Columbus and Amarillo. Pair that up with some blood orange and some grapefruit and a milkshake IPA. That's going to be phenomenal.
Because you're already getting sweetness off of the lactose from the milkshake IPA, so you got to think about what you're going to be adding that's going to kind of, help punch that through. Why is it going to be a soft kind of like bleh milkshake IPA, or are you going to get something that's bright and vibrant and really, hammers home a big flavor? And so that's kind of the balancing act that you kind of play in your mind when you're thinking fruit and hops. But overall, berries are the easiest because berries generally have a natural kind of balance between acidity and sweetness, or acidity and flavor. So that's why I like those.
A couple of things I'm reading in here. The Count has done a wheat beer with flour in the mash. We have experimented with that before. Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's something that's really good to do. Just keep in mind when you have it that thin, be prepared for like stuck stuff.
Use some halts.
Dry yeast be stored cold. Of course, yeast is going to last longer when it's cold. You can store it warm. They are meant to be stored on shelves.
Our room, by the way, here is not very warm. We have a very cold retail space, but at the same time, they will store better cold. The ones behind us, we turn these over fast enough that we're not super worried about it, and so we keep them at regular temperature. We use them personally, and yes, we can vouch that they are good to go.
Yeah. What barnyard tastes like, and literally barnyard. It's hard to describe, but once you have it, you're like, yeah, this is like I walked into a barn.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to describe it. I kind of describe it as if you're on a farm, you took your beer into the barn to go tie up some horses, and you're drinking.
You take all the shit smell out of the barn.
That's
and then the leftover everything that's in there is the good stuff. Yeah,
the old wood, the kind of mustiness that's in there. Even hay, some kind of hay and alfalfa.
Exactly. Yeah, all that stuff. Like that's the good stuff.
Sometimes it's described as a horse sweat. So you know, if you
horse blanket,
horse blanket, kind of thing on there too. It's a little bit hard to describe. When you have it, you'll know it. If you can get your hands on any 100% Brett beers, or even Belgian lambics or mixed fermented beers, you'll definitely get that barnyard flavor. You'll drink it and go like, I'm in a barn, but it's a great thing.
Yeah, somehow that funkiness kind of makes sense with the beer. That's the overall goal.
So right now, I'm going to call you out on this right now, Jason Sanic. Barnyard smells bad and tastes worse. Okay, no, I'm not going to call you out. That's your opinion. You're welcome to it. I happen to love it. If it's
love it too.
Out of balance,
right?
Yes, it is horrible. It's literally like, oh, I grabbed a bunch of hay and soaked it in water and drank it.
Yeah,
no.
You don't want that musty oil, but if you get it in balance and you get that good amount of funk on top of a lot of like subtle fruity notes on top of like, I love barnyard and stouts, honestly. That's why we're going to be doing a Brett stout to try to get that. But on top of like that roasty, that coffee notes and everything else that can go on in beer, like a little bit of barnyard to balance out a really complex beer, it can be phenomenal.
Yeah. If you have access to a true English old ale, actually, most of those are finished out with Brettanomyces, and that just little bit of funkiness that's on there is the Brettanomyces as well.
Yeah. Someone's asking for commercial Brett beers to recommend. The best one that I've had, and I haven't had a lot in the last couple of years. The last one that I had was the Enjoy After.
Enjoy After was pretty good. Great expression of Brettanomyces on that.
And that was a fruitier Brettanomyces than a lot of so not as much of the barnyard flavor, but yeah.
Yeah. There's quite a few out there. It does depend on your regional area. One of my favorite beers that's soured only with Brettanomyces is Crux's Freak Cake.
Yeah.
I think Freak Cake is phenomenal, and if you can especially get vintages, you can really see what Brettanomyces does. When it's fresh, Freak Cake is super, super funky, and then as it gets years on it, it is sour and fruity and just delicious.
It's really, really good.
Firestone Walker, their Barrel Works series has a lot of Brett beers that are out there that you can get a hold of. And again, if you go to the shelves and you find things that are Belgian lambics, Lindemans is not the best choice. They definitely sweeten their beers up and everything. If you can get the Lindemans Cuvée René's, those are actually really good and more towards the true original style. But do keep in mind that a lot of these lambics and Belgian sour beers are going to be have more in them than besides just Brett.
Yeah.
Stone and Avery. Avery does a lot of Brett beers too. So both of those, as far as nationwide distribution, are pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
And then, just kind of look out for it.
You're going to have different ones in your area that, we don't necessarily know about or have access to.
Yeah.
If you find a really good one, send us one.
Definitely.
Can you tell me like beer?
I mean, any Hill Farmstead people out there that could just chuck it straight over here? Yes, please.
Asian Farmhouse Ale, love their Farmhouse Ale. I don't think I've had that.
Yeah. All right. Let us read through.
Have we had to shut down or were able to sell to go? We have been able to sell to go. People coming in for growlers and cans and stuff like that. It's not a big part of our business. It's still not making up for taproom sales losses, but we have been able to sell some to go. So we're not dying yet, which is good.
Yeah.
Can you explain it to Kentucky Common Style? Yes, it's light, it's slightly corny, slightly fruity. Overall, it's a really clean beer with a dark color and not very much dark flavor, but some dark flavor.
Yes. Oh man, comments are.
Can you send us your own beers? Please do. We would love to taste them. We have a hashtag Genus Rate My Beer. If you send it to us, we will taste it on camera and we will let people know what it tastes like.
Oh, I just saw this one. DC. What's a great hop for a smash beer? I'm going to go, depending on what you're making, of course, that changes it up a lot. Mosaic is a wonderful, wonderful hop to use for that.
Yeah.
I would also say, beyond kind of your standards, Amarillo's going to be great. Cascade's going to be great. EKG's, East Kent Goldings are going to be super delicious on there. But going into some of those other ones, Laurel and Equinaut are two that jump right into my mind. Those will
Laurel
make some
will be one of my first ones to try out
good
with, yeah.
smash beers, especially since they do respond in differently in different spots of the boil. You can get some really good bitterness. You can get some really good fruitiness out of those too.
I'm gonna throw in Columbus to the
yes.
You should do this as a smash beer, just because
Yes.
Columbus not only is super dank, but if you use it only on the back end instead of dankness, you can get a ton of grapefruit quality as well. There's a ton of complex flavor that comes from Columbus that you don't expect because you usually only see it as a bittering addition, or like in newer like dank IPAs you'll see it as later additions too. But yeah, use Columbus as a smash beer. Really get to know what all that can. My wife says the wine store closes at 8:30 p.m. She's hinting that I should close this down.
Hey, we still got about an hour left.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's get through some questions though, and then let's close
all
it out in the next 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, I did call you out a little bit there, Jason. Again, don't take this in any way. I absolutely love those flavors. Your taste buds, man. If you love what you're drinking, if you don't, that's all you. So
Double barrel butt chug, 2 bottles of Jameson.
oof,
Done.
no.
We did that last night.
I mean, you
Yeah,
know.
we're not going to do it again because that's an experience had between friends and not on camera. Duh.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we send you your own brews, and can you send you you can send us whatever. Our website's our address is public because we're a business, so send it to Genus Brewing. You can look up our website on Google. It's there.
Yeah.
Send us all the stuff. We'll drink it.
Dreadlock Mike, Nogano Norwegian. I had one experience tasting that Norwegian farmhouse ale. This is what we're talking about in Quebec.
Yeah.
This is where Quebec started out. All Norwegian farmhouse ales are Quebecs, but not all Quebecs are Norwegian farmhouse ales. Let's start out with that. The Nogano was really tasty. There was really good flavors coming off of that as far as really being able to taste the Quebec and what's coming out of it. For people who don't know Norwegian farmhouse ale, basically think of a farmhouse ale. You're thinking of like Saison, but without having the Saison flavors, you have Quake flavors instead. It's almost the same base beer, but you're experiencing the Quake yeast instead of Saison, which is really enjoyable. We did talk about that earlier. If you missed it, rewind.
Somebody's asking, he has 8 pounds of, so Joe, asking 8 pounds of Golden Promise, best hops to do with a smash. The stock answer would be EKGs. However, I'm going to throw Idaho 7 into the conversation.
Yes.
With Golden Promise, you already got that malty, pseudo, almost nuttiness in the Golden Promise. Idaho 7 has a really great balance of, brightness, fruitiness, citrusness, but also, maintaining some of that base grassy pungence that you get from something like an EKG or even a size. It's not prominent, but it's there enough that I think it'd be a good balance to Golden Promise.
Idaho, while you're saying the EKGs, that would be phenomenal. Bramling Cross actually would be really good for that too. Kind of bring out some of that other sweetness coming from it.
Yeah.
But the Idaho 7s would be a great thing to experiment around with. I think that would be a phenomenal hop for it. You get that American influence, but at the same time, you're still catching all of the deliciousness from the Golden Promise.
Can you justify a grain bill of 50% honey malt? No. Unless it was, my counter to that is going to be unless it's like a Melomel or a Graph where the total grain bill is like 4 pounds.
Yes.
So the total grain bill is 4 pounds. It's 2 pounds of 2 pounds of honey malt, and the rest of the fermentables come from like apple cider or honey. Then maybe. And a regular beer, no.
Yeah. For my personal no on this, honey malt to me is very aggressive.
It is.
You can use a small amount of it and it has a huge impact. Personally, I like to use brew malt over that. It gives you those nice honey flavors
touch more acid behind
getting cloyingly sweet. And again, for my taste buds, I don't like the cloyingly sweet that an over honey malt beer can come off as.
Right.
Throwing it into the proper beer where you really want some sweetness to support, like again, a Graf would be a wonderful thing where you want that honey sweetness to support those apples coming into it. That's a really great place to use it, but I think that would be extremely specialty to use 50% honey malt. Extract recipes to all grain. Yes, that is something that we could do.
We do a video. Yeah. It's I feel like that'd be a short video. But yeah, we could definitely do that.
A lot of math involved. Do you like lectures?
We're on it.
Exactly.
Ever had Tennant's Lager? Have you had Tennant? I haven't had Tennant's Lager.
I have not had Tennant's Lager, no.
Yeah.
I do have to say that some of my experience with overseas beers happened at a very much earlier standpoint in my life.
Yeah.
When I couldn't appreciate them as much as I can now.
And was already drunk half the time. So.
I mean, I was 18 in England, so pint of the best bitter turned into 5, and I stumbled home.
Right.
But it did give me a good appreciation for things. For those of you that want to know, it was Fuller's London Pride.
Yeah.
A phenomenal beer, off cask, because,
That's the only way to do it.
The only way. Real beer for life. But yeah, no, we have not. Send some to us, and then we'll hashtag Genus Rate our beer on it.
Yeah. All right, I think that's going to cover everything. It's getting close to our closing time, so we should probably wrap this up, right?
Yeah, somebody informed that of us earlier. I don't know who, though.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
All right.
The wine stores are about to close, and I should probably go grab a bottle and bring it home.
Ooh, that might actually be what she's saying right now.
I'm pretty sure it is. If you in UK, come to the brewery. He'll hook you. Oh, nice. On our way.
Yes. I mean, hey, that might happen sometime. Definitely.
We'll have to get out of this this current period so we can actually have an excuse to go travel. But yeah,
and travel safely. But hey, beer around the world. I'm okay to do a cross seas collab. Like that sounds delicious.
That'd be awesome.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's go ahead and close this up. Thanks so much to everyone who tuned in and is watching this. Thanks especially to those who super chatted us. We really appreciate the support, especially during this time where we can't sell all the beer in-house. Yeah, we really appreciate you tuning in. If you have any questions, feel free to shout them out on Facebook or in the comments after this video is over or below this video currently. And we'll see you the next time, which might be sooner rather than later. If we end up with a lot of slow nights like this, we might be doing a lot more live streams. So
you're gonna see a little bit of us, right? All right. At the end of it, always throw this out there: smash that like button, smash the other buttons. I love saying smash.
Yeah. Hulk smash.
So do it. Yay! High fives.
We'll see you guys later.
Okay.